What is going on, you beautiful people? My name is Chad. This is a Cubic Mini wood stove, and in this video I'm going to tell you everything I wish I knew before spending $1,000 roughly on this Cubic Mini wood stove. Make sure you watch the entire video because there are some pretty valid points that I wish I knew before purchasing this, and I'll also tell you what we have been using for heat instead of the Cubic Mini while we've been traveling through Vermont. Now, the first thing I do want to say is this is absolutely nothing against Cubic Mini, nothing against the product itself. This wood stove is so well made. It does what it says and it really heats this place up, but rather it's how you're able to use it if you're going to be traveling like we have been for the last month or so. And I am actually an affiliate for Cubic Mini, so I have no reason to be saying these things other than I have found them to be the truth for me, and I want to get the truth out there for other people. Cubic Mini themselves even says that if you are going to be driving, you need to take off the top, which you can see we have stored inside right now, because we're constantly driving. We've been traveling through Vermont for about a month now, and you have to put a plug on the top. Now, originally I thought I was going to get around this by just stuffing some cloth or rags up and blocking the pipe from here so that I wouldn't have to go on the roof every time, but they've actually installed a metal grate in the top of this that you would have to take out every time if you were to do that, and you'll also get your hands completely filthy with soot every time you do it. So that is just something to think about. We have not done it every time. If we're going to be driving on the highway, we will absolutely climb up and take it off, but if we're in a town and we're just taking back roads, we have just cleaned the ashes out and dealt with it that way so that no ashes are spewing out the top of the roof as you're driving down the road. But that does bring me to kind of the next limitation, and that is, even without plugging the cap, if you are going to be driving in the near to midterm future, you can't or really shouldn't have a fire. Now, that is because the coals afterwards stay very, very hot. We actually ended up going to bed one night. We left the fire going in the morning. It was about 8 hours after we had put the last log in. Everything in there looked like it was cooled off, and we went and put the ashes into our trash can. And well, let me just show you what happened when we did that. So we have it taped up, but you can see it burned a hole right through the bottom of our trash can. Now, it's a good thing there was nothing flammable in there, or we would have had a whole different issue on our hands. And yeah, we have just kind of taped over it, and you know, we have a bag in here, so it works out. But the ashes stay hot, or the coals stay hot rather, for a lot longer than one would think. So if you're going to be driving in the near to midterm future, you really shouldn't or can't have a fire. So the one workaround we have found for this is to actually take a stainless steel bowl and scoop out the hot embers and put them in and mix them with water. But now what you're doing is, one, you are using up your water, which is, for us at least, is very valuable while we're traveling, especially in the winter. It's very hard to find places to fill up your water. And two, we are double using our water if we then have to wash out that stainless steel bowl. So it's just not very convenient, and not something that I really thought of when purchasing this wood stove in the beginning. And also, for the amount of money you spent, do you really want to have limitations with your heat? It's just kind of become a little pain in the butt. I will say, while we have been traveling through Vermont in the last month, we have only burnt the wood stove, I think, 1 or 2 nights, and that is because we were staying at a state park. We knew we could be there, we knew we wouldn't get a knock throughout the night, so we felt very comfortable, and it did its job, and it kept this place super warm and toasty. But that brings me to the next point, is if you are parking somewhere that you don't know if you're allowed to be there, and you might get a knock in the middle of the night, you really shouldn't or can't burn the wood stove, because if you do have to snuff the fire, then you're gonna be having to make charcoal stew. You're gonna be wasting your water, and it's just not a good situation. And the other thing is, if you're parking in a parking lot, or if you're going to the gym, you really need a secondary source of heat, because you're gonna have to be driving after. Or if you're in the case of a Walmart, I'm pretty sure the store wouldn't want a bunch of vehicles in their parking lot burning fires, and when this thing is running outside, because it smells delicious. So you might draw attention, you might get a knock, you might not be able to stay at the Walmart anymore. Just could cause all sorts of issues, and that is also something I didn't think of before purchasing this. Alright, another limitation that I've found that this is kind of a minor one, but if you are crossing state lines, such as we are, it is illegal to bring wood over the border. Sorry, I got the hiccups. Okay, that's better. So like I was saying, if you are crossing state lines, it is illegal to bring wood over the border. Now, if you'll actually get caught, who knows? But it's just one more thing to think about, that wherever you're going, you're gonna either have to be going outside and harvesting your own wood for it, and you might have problems with that depending on where you're getting the wood from, or you're going to have to buy wood in the state that you're in. The other thing about the wood is, if you are buying it, this is a tiny, tiny wood stove. So what you're gonna end up having to do is actually processing the logs into something that can fit and can burn. Now, we found cutting regular campfire logs into thirds works pretty well for us, but then again, this also takes time and it takes power, because we are using a battery powered circular saw, which is draining from our electricity. And since we are in Vermont in the winter, there is not many sunny days. I can tell you, in the month we've been here, we've probably had 6 sunny days, and 4 of those have been this week. So just another thing to think about, another hassle that you might have if you are traveling and you think you're going to be using this as your primary heat source. And the other thing about having small size logs in the Cubic Mini is that you are constantly feeding the fire. Now, when I say constantly, it's about every hour, hour and a half, depending on how you have your flue settings, your draft settings rather. But if you think, I know I thought that when we would go to bed, I would just load this thing up full, I'd take a little oxygen away from it, and it would, stay on pretty long. We'd wake up nice and warm, but that is just not the case. A lot of times it'll be about 80 degrees in here, 75, 80, we'll be sweating in bed, and it'll be below freezing outside. The next morning, if we don't tend the fire all night, we will end up waking up, not so much cold in bed because we're warm under the covers, but the rest of the van, once you get out of bed in the morning, is absolute terror, and you're dealing with 40 degrees, sometimes 30 degrees, and we are pretty well insulated. We have the floor insulated, the walls insulated, the ceiling insulated. That back door is a 6-inch wall behind me, or 4-inch wall behind me, that is fully packed with fiberglass insulation. So I'd say we're probably one of the better insulated camper van vehicles, but just something to think about is it's not going to last you all night unless you're waking up and feeding it, and if you are doing that, then I do not want to be your friend the next day, because you're probably going to be pretty cranky, as would I. Now that brings me to one of the final limitations of this stove, and this is actually partially my fault for how I installed it, but as you can see, this is about 3.5 to 4 feet off the ground. I originally thought, this is such a small space that once the ceiling heats up, the heat will start getting pushed down and the floor will eventually come up to temperature. But what actually happens is within the first hour, the ceiling and the bed area, which is behind the camera and is lofted, will get to be about 70 to 80 degrees, while the floor will be about 45 to 50 degrees. And as you can see, we do have this, oh, I'm gonna knock it over. As you can see, we do have this little heat-powered fan that when the Cubic Mini is roaring, it will blow heat in a direction, but that direction cannot be down with how it's mounted. So what we have tried is this little magnetic fan that's battery powered. We will mount it typically up near the roof, and we will try to blow the heat down, which does work a little bit. The floor will still be 20 degrees or so cooler than the ceiling, but what actually ends up happening is we will start to see a negative draft, and smoke will start coming into our space, and before we know it, the fire alarm's going off if we haven't already taken it down, and we are breathing in smoke, which is definitely not good. So in conclusion, Cubic Mini is an absolutely outstanding product if you are not going to be driving and traveling and relying on it as your main source of heat. So that brings me to what we actually have been using for heat on this trip. For the most part, as I've said, we've only used this 1 or 2 nights when we were staying at a state park. But we have been using a cheap Chinese diesel heater that I got off of eBay. They sell exact similar ones on Amazon, so if you want, I will post a link in the description to a similar one that I bought. Yeah, and I got it for about $150, and it has been an absolute champ. It was -17 Fahrenheit the other night, and we ran it on low throughout the entire night, and it kept it 60 degrees in here, which was just absolutely crazy. Just so you know, low is, there's 6 settings. We were on setting 1, setting 6. It probably would have been 80, and we probably would have had to open a window. The other thing about the diesel heater is it is forced heat, so there's a fan actually blowing the heat, which actually makes all the cold areas of the van, such as the storage under the couch, the floor, even just like where we store our clothes, those all get filled with warm heat, and the whole van becomes the same temperature. Now why that is so important is because when the Cubic Mini is running and we do have cold areas, once the Cubic Mini goes out, those cold areas mix with the warm areas and it cools off a lot faster in here than with the diesel heater. With the diesel heater, we are able to even turn it off at night if it's going to be in the 30s, sometimes even a little colder than that, and we'll wake up in the morning and it will be 50 in here, which is a lot better than waking up and having it be 35 or 40 in here. The other thing is we could buy 6 or 7 of those diesel heaters before it came to the cost of this bad boy right here. So for the price you're paying, and also for what you're burning, the actual diesel, when we run it on low, I think it's about 50 hours of runtime or so before we burn through 1 gallon of diesel, which is just crazy. So it actually costs more to buy wood. If you think about having to process the wood, it's a lot more of a pain in the butt compared to just push button heat with the diesel heater. So with that, I'm going to wrap the video up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got even an ounce of knowledge out of this video, please give it a thumbs up. It would help immensely. Also, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. I'm going to be trying to get multiple videos out every single week. You guys are awesome. I am looking forward to seeing where this channel goes, and to keep you guys filled in with things that I am learning while living the van life, and hopefully inspiring some other people to take a step towards their dreams and get out there and do what they want to do and not care about what other people think. So with that, let's wrap it up here and have a great rest of your day or night, guys. I will see you in the next video.